Welcome to Beautiful Thrift Homemaking. We're reading through a vintage cookbook from 1917. It's also an instructional novel, so we learn a lot about cooking back in that day from the young bride Bettina and her husband Bob as they work through their first year of marriage. After a park party, chapter 47. A beautiful day, said Bettina at the breakfast table. September is doing better than August. I was just thinking, said Bob, that it might be fun to get Harry and Alice and go out to Kilcare Park this evening. I don't believe you've been on a roller coaster this year. It would be fun to go, said Bettina, although I haven't missed the roller coaster. Well, let's ask them to go. We can stay there a while and then... then what? Oh, nothing. Then go home. Bob, you meant come here afterward and have a nice little lunch, didn't you? I confess that I thought of that, and then I happened to remember that you were going out this afternoon and wouldn't want to bother with any preparations for a party. Going out this afternoon would not worry me at all. It is just that my funds are getting a little low, and I couldn't serve anything expensive. Let me think what I have on hand. Yes, I believe I could do it by serving a salad and a dessert out of my own head. A Bettina salad? That's the very best kind. And what will the dessert be? A Bettina dessert, too. I have some lovely apples, Bob, and I just can't afford anything very expensive. I know this will be good, too, but you mustn't complain if I have sponge cake to eat with it. I should say not, Bettina. Whatever you give us will tickle me, and Alice and Harry are in such a state of blindness that they won't know what they're eating. That evening they had Bettina's salad and Boston brown bread sandwiches, Bettina's apples, sponge cake, and coffee. And in this chapter we have the recipes for the Bettina's salad and Bettina's apples, along with the hot water sponge cake. All right, now to read chapter 48 before our discussion. Bettina spills the ink. Where are you, Bettina? Called Bob one September evening when Bettina failed to meet him at the door. Oh, Bettina! Here I am, Bob, in the kitchen. Oh, I'm so ashamed of myself. What for? My carelessness. I just spilled a whole bottle of ink on this new apron of mine. I had begun to get dinner, and as it was a little early, I sat down for a minute to finish a letter to Polly. Then all at once I thought something was burning and jumped up in such a hurry that I spilled the ink. I ought to have known better than to try to do two things at once. Luckily, the dinner was all right, but look at this apron, and it was such a pretty one. Well, Bettina, I'm always getting ink and auto grease on my clothes, and you seem to keep yours spotless. So it is a surprise to me that it happened. Still, spoiling a new apron may be unfortunate, but I shouldn't call it tragic. Is it really spoiled? No, I think I can fix it up so it will be almost as good as new, but it's a nuisance. See, I'm soaking it in this sour milk. I'll leave it here for 4 hours and then apply some more milk for a while. Then I believe the ink will come out when I rinse it. Well, Bettina, I'm glad you didn't spill ink on the dinner. Something smells mighty good. They had beef balls, gravy, mashed potatoes, Bettina's celery and eggs, cinnamon rolls, butter, and watermelon. And in this chapter, we have the recipes for the beef balls, horseradish sauce, mashed potatoes, and Bettina's celery and eggs. So join me and we will discuss these two chapters. Well, we're going to discuss chapter 47, After a Park Party. It is a beautiful day. As you know, if you live somewhere where the weather is as it is where I live in Northern California, we are moving into fall. So September is doing better than August. I would agree with Bettina. We have some just slight chill in the air in the mornings, and we are starting to see some signs of fall here. I have seen some oak leaves on the ground, and the persimmon trees have a little change in color in the leaves. Then our October Glory maple trees have started browning a little on some of the leaves. So those are the signs that I've seen so far, and they've been welcome. Summer was very hot. All right. I like what Bob said about Alice and Harry. That was so funny. So Alice and Harry are an engaged couple, and Bob said, "Whatever you give us will tickle me." And Alice and Harry are in such a state of blindness that they won't know what they're eating. So that was fun. And then you'll notice that Bettina is somewhat concerned about not having anything expensive to serve. I'm thinking that might be because she knows her friend Alice is a society girl. She is used to fine things. So that's probably what's on her mind, but that didn't stop her. She got creative. She came up with her own salad recipe and her own dessert recipe. Her uncle John, in previous chapters, had given her a lot of apples, her and her mother both, a lot of apples. And we know they've made apple jelly with other combinations, also apple raspberry and so forth. And they're talking about pressing some cider eventually. So she has apples, and so she's going to use that in her dessert. She's going to use 6 apples in her dessert. But let's talk about her salad first. Bettina's salad makes 4 portions, and it's somewhat like a cheese ball that she's made, served over lettuce leaves. So I'll read that to you. Bettina's salad for 4 portions. 1 cup of chopped New York cheese. Personally, I don't know what a New York cheese is. She says that you can put it through the food chopper or grate it. 12 pimento stuffed olives, chopped. 3 sweet pickles, chopped very fine. 1/4 a cup chopped roasted peanuts. Now that's a surprise ingredient. 1/4 a teaspoon of salt. 1/8 a teaspoon of paprika, of course. And then she mixes all that together and forms it into balls 1 inch in diameter, so about the size of a meatball. So picture that. Then she's going to arrange several on a lettuce leaf, and she's going to serve salad dressing with it. She has 4 tablespoons of salad dressing, so 1 for each portion. 1 tablespoon for each portion would be sprinkled over the top of that. All right, so that's very different. We do grow olives where I live, and there are a couple of specialized stores that sell all sorts of olives stuffed with all sorts of things. So it's really easy for me to find pimento stuffed olives, various sizes, in fact. There are some very large olives in some of the jars that they sell. And then they have them stuffed with garlic and hot peppers, mushrooms. There's just so many different varieties available in those shops. We have seen pimento peppers used in some of the recipes earlier, and I think, if I remember right, in the very first chapter where we learned about the emergency shelf, that she had, let's see, is it? I'm looking. Yes, the very first item was 6 cans of pimentos, small size. So she kept those in her pantry for these pickup meals, as she calls them, when she's not able to plan a recipe ahead and she needs to make something with what's on hand. She called that a pickup meal. And so she would draw from that pantry, and pimentos were part of her pantry stock. But in this case, these pimentos are already pre-stuffed in the olives and chopped. And then she uses the sweet pickles. Some of you might have been making sweet pickles with your summer cucumbers. Let me know in the comments if that's something that you do. Then we'll move on to the Bettina's apples recipe. So she's, as I said, using 6 apples and making 6 portions. She has 1 cup of sea sugar, which we found out is brown sugar, light brown sugar. 1 cup of water, 8 marshmallows, I do want to say about the marshmallows is I looked that up and I was wondering when packaged marshmallows became available commercially, and I don't think they were available at that time, and yet from the information I can find online, and yet the way she refers to them makes me think that they were. So it might be that they weren't sold by a big food company like they are now, like Kraft or something, some such company as that. But it might be that a smaller producer, smaller local producer, maybe made marshmallows and they were available at the stores in that way from that source. Because she doesn't talk about making the marshmallows herself. So she's going to use 8 marshmallows and a half a cup of shredded coconut and 6 cherries. 6 apples, 6 cherries. Peel and core the apples. Drop into the sugar and water, which has been boiled for 10 minutes to form a syrup. Place a lid on the pan and cook the apples until tender. Remove from the syrup and roll in the coconut. So they're going to be sticky with that sugar syrup on them. So the coconut then I picture is going to stick to the outsides of the apples. Add the marshmallows to the syrup, which has been removed from the fire, and allow them to melt. Stir them into the syrup. When the marshmallows are dissolved, stir the mixture to mix the marshmallows with the syrup. Now imagine that the syrup has now gone from being somewhat clear to being kind of white. Pour around the apple and fill the hole in the center of the apple. Place a red cherry on the top of each. All right, that'd be a fun recipe to try. And I'm wondering then if this hot water sponge cake is served alongside of it, because sponge cake is made to soak up some sort of a nice sweet liquid, isn't it? So hot water sponge cake, 8 portions. So now she's going to have leftovers of this to serve on another day with something else. I don't know if she has any summer strawberries still available in her area, but sponge cake would be maybe good with some strawberries with some little bit of sugar syrup. So to make the hot water sponge cakes, she'll need 2 egg yolks, 1 cup sugar, 1 cup boiling water, 1 tablespoon lemon juice, 1 teaspoon grated rind lemon, 2 egg whites, 1 cup flour, 1 teaspoon baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon salt. So you see she's separated her egg yolks from her egg whites. Remember, we've talked about before that you don't want any touch of egg yolk in your egg whites when you're doing this method, when you're going to use them separately. When you're going to beat the egg whites, they need to not have any yolk, not a speck of yolk in them, or they won't beat up and get foamy, and then they won't make peaks. And that's what you're going to want. And that's why you're separating them, is to change that egg white. So you're going to separate your eggs and beat the yolks until thick and lemon colored. Add the sugar gradually and beat for 2 minutes. Add the flour, sifted with the baking powder and salt. I remember showing you my antique sifter that I have. It's a little hand crank thing with a vessel with a screen on it, and you crank it, and as you do, it moves some metal bars inside across what's in there, across the screen, and so it breaks up any lumps that you might have in your flour. If your baking powder and your salt are clumped for some reason, it'll also break those up, and then it kind of mixes everything together a bit as you're putting it in with the rest of your things. So that's why that's done, the sifting process. So after you've added that flour with the baking powder and salt in it, you're going to add the boiling water, the lemon juice, and the grated rind. Beat with a Dover egg beater 2 minutes. Fold in whites of the eggs. Again, the last step often in these baked goods is to gently fold in the egg whites that have been beaten. Bake 35 minutes in a moderate oven in an unbuttered pan. Do not cut sponge cake except through the crust, then break apart. Very interesting. I wonder why that is, and let me know if you know anything about that. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to cut through sponge cake. All right, so that's chapter 47, and in just a split second, I'm going to talk to you about chapter 48. So now we're on to chapter 48. Thanks for being with me, and we're going to talk about Bettina spilling the ink on her beautiful apron. It just broke her heart because she thought she had ruined it. And you remember that we had some pictures of some of her aprons in this book. Let me flip through and see if I can find one of those for you. Let's see, that's a coat. Not very many illustrations in here. It's probably just at the very beginning. We had this one. So you see it's a full coverage apron covering up her dress. And she's also got a little cooking cap on. Used to be that people kept their hair covered when they were cooking to avoid getting hair in the food. Now this one, this little picture, she's wearing an apron also. And you see how long her apron is? And that it comes up over the shoulders. Ties in the back, and again a little cooking cap, little baking cap on her head. Here's another. What a long apron that is. Even has sleeves coming down to the elbows. And then a baking cap. Yes. So she had a new apron that she got ink on. And it was one of these types of inks that were used back in the day. Now this is in a plastic container. It's not that old. We know that because it's in plastic. Hers would have been in a glass. But here is some black ink and a pen. She was writing a letter while she was cooking, and she thought, do I smell something burning? And she popped up off the table and bumped the ink and spilled it. And so when Bob came home, he found her in dismay, trying to get the stain out of her apron. I liked what Bob said, where he talked about it not being, he says, still, spoiling a new apron may be unfortunate, but I shouldn't call it tragic. So, but in Bettina's world, yes, somewhat of a mini tragedy at least, right? Now, Bettina scolded herself and said, I ought to have known better than to try to do two things at once. So she wasn't into multitasking, was she? Nope. Let's focus on the task at hand is her mode of operation. So, well, anyway, she uses sour milk, which perhaps that's like buttermilk. And that is her stain remover. I looked it up and it said that you can try rubbing alcohol. So it's very unlikely that you are going to be writing a letter with black ink and spill the ink on your apron. So I'll leave that to you to find out what to do if that happens to you. So we'll look at the recipes now. The beef balls, that would be kind of like meatballs, right? Meatballs. So they're made with a round steak that she will grind herself in her meat grinder. And then she's going to season it with the salt, paprika, and celery salt and onion salt. Then shape it into round cakes and broil them 7 minutes under the flame. While they're cooking, she prepared the horseradish sauce. That word is not easy to say. I did grow horseradish in my garden one year, and it should have come back because it can be a perennial, but things changed in the garden, and anyway, it did not. So I will say that you can make your own, by the way, and grow that. If that's something your family enjoys, then you ought to give that a try, because the commercial horse radish sauces have so much junk in them, you just might want to read the ingredients and think about making your own if that is a stable condiment in your home. So the horseradish sauce for 4 portions is a tablespoon of flour, a tablespoon of butter, 1 cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of horseradish, and a half a teaspoon of salt. Melt the butter, add the flour, mix well, add the milk, and cook 1 minute. Sounds awfully like the start of a white sauce, doesn't it? Add the salt and the horseradish. Serve immediately. So that is how she made that. And then on the menu, we also had the mashed potatoes, which are made in a traditional way. She does use a vegetable ricer or mash well with a potato masher. She adds butter, salt, and pepper and milk and beats vigorously. All right, now let's go over this one, Bettina's celery and eggs, and we'll see what that is. 1 cup of cooked diced celery, 2 hard-cooked eggs sliced, 2/3 a cup vegetable white sauce, 1 tablespoon of butter, 3 tablespoons of fresh breadcrumbs. Add the sliced hard-cooked eggs and cooked celery to the white sauce. Mix well. Pour the mixture into a well-buttered baking dish. Cover with the crumbs, which have been mixed with melted butter. Bake in a moderate oven until a delicate brown. This reminds me, because this is so much like that onion dish. There was an onions in that were cooked in a white sauce and had some breadcrumbs on top and then baked in the oven. And that was a few chapters ago, and I am determined to try that one of these days for my own lunch. I'm going to give that a try. I'm going to have to look back and see where exactly that was. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. And there's the scalloped cabbage. I want to try that as well, and that's very much the same. So she has a lot of recipes that call for that white sauce, and we've talked about it, and one of the chapters was dealing just exclusively with the white sauces and other types of sauces that are a foundation for her recipes. Very popular in 1917, apparently, as seems to be paprika. Okay, so those were the recipes. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about, just something I'd like to say on my own for this time of year, is we've been talking a lot about Bettina having flower arrangements on her table. And when I go outside now here in September in Northern California, I find that many of the flowers have started to die and go to seed. So these are, I just brought these in so I could remember to talk about them. These are dried calendula flowers. And I noticed something different about the calendulas here where I live, is they were a winter flower. They were in flower during the winter and added some color outside. There's no other color really out there that I can think of, except for maybe the snapdragons also. So 2 flowers, calendulas and snapdragons. If you live in somewhat of a mild climate, you might want to try those for winter time. But because these had bloomed throughout the winter, by the end of summer, they're kind of spent and end up being completely dried. And so then, therefore, if you were to go around and take a bag and get those seeds, that's what's in here, you see, is you have the flower seeds, try to show you, that you can get from those dried flower heads, because that's what they are, is there's the seeds that are there, and you can collect them. I would say that the very best thing to store your flower and vegetable seeds in when you're collecting them. Like you can collect vegetable seeds from your heirloom vegetables because they will be true to seed and grow what you grew this year, next year. So it makes sense to collect the seeds and make sure they're completely dry when you store them so that they don't mold. And it'd be best not to store them in plastic. It'd be best to store them in a waxed paper envelope if you have any of those, or if you can make some. But worst comes to worst, it'll probably work for you to put it in the plastic Ziploc as long as you make sure that there's no moisture getting trapped inside, that they're completely dry before you seal it up and store them for the season. So I'm thinking of planting these in another flower bed and hoping then that they will come up. I'm gonna do that soon, and I'm gonna give that a try and see if maybe they'll come up and grow over in another spot for beautiful. These are a beautiful pale yellow calendula, and I'm hoping that I can have those for the winter. Along with, I need to get some snapdragon seeds and see if I can put those in there too. And those come in yellow, and that's what I have in my front. So I have some yellow snapdragons. My mom had some pink and yellow ones. Those were really pretty. I think maybe I'll look for some seeds for those and get those started, and we'll see if I can have some color in winter. So I'm hoping that you've enjoyed this. One of the things that's on my heart for this channel is not to be commercial, not to try to sell you anything. And I hope that you've appreciated that aspect. I hope you've also there we go, case in point. What I was going to say is I hope you also appreciate that I'm just a real person and I make my mistakes and stumble over my words, and I'm just me, and I'm not a professional speaker. I'm not a professional presenter by any means. And I'm just a real person. I'm a mother and a wife. I've been a homemaker for many years. I also work a full-time job, and I'm a Christian. I love the Lord Jesus. He's the number one most important relationship in my life, and I just have a heart to share with you all about homemaking. And so I know that it honors God when we try to care for our family as well. So I'm just trying to encourage you, and I just find it really fun to read this book, share the stories with you, and talk about the recipes and the changes in cooking and food preparation over time. I've just loved the charming aspects, and I have to say that I am a bit of a romantic in the sense that I just love a lot of times the ideas of the lovely things. So I hope you've enjoyed that as well. If you know of a friend who might enjoy these, feel free to share the videos, and have a great day. Okay, take care.